Welcome, Game of Thrones fans. We're back with a new episode review of House of the Dragon. We are up to episode 8, The Lord of the Tide. So let me let you guys know right off the bat, this was one of my favorite episodes of the season. A lot of unintentional comedy in this one, but also a couple sad moments. And you kind of realize with this episode, if you haven't already, some of these characters cannot get out of their own way. So we kind of already know where things are going. The warfare cannot be avoided no matter what everyone is trying to do, particularly old Viserys in his last sad moments. But before going to Viserys, I want to start immediately with Vaemon. Vaemon is going to be my MVP of this episode. He was on one the entire show, completely memorable, made the best use of his limited screen time. He thought it was his moment, but I think his character really shows you the importance of knowing how to play the game. And also what Viserys said to him in his last moments, knowing your place. I feel like because he was a second son and this was his first moment in the spotlight, he really didn't know how to act. And that led to a lot of memorable moments. I feel like that phrase he said before he got his head chopped off was probably a top five line ever in the Song of Ice and Fire universe. Him particularly yelling at Rhaenyra that your son are bastards and you're a whore. That was just complete comedy. But let's get back to how all the situation with him started. Number one, he saw his opportunity to finally get from behind the shadows with Corlys over at war and potentially on his deathbed with blood fever. Rhaenys has been trying to rule for the last 6 years, and he finally feels like this is his moment. Unlike what happened with Rhaenyra being made the heir to the Iron Throne, Daemon is like, we're not going to do that here. He basically told Rhaenys to her face, you're not going to be in charge. I am a true Valerian. This is my true blood. We know that Lucerys, Rhaenyra's children are all bastards. I should be the next in line, and I want your support, but I don't need to have it. So he's very firm in saying what he's going to do when he gets to the council meeting. That was his first mistake. Number one, you don't lay out your whole plan like that, especially when you know you're about to be a subversive agent and usurping the line of several people. You don't telegraph that, especially when you don't have any real supporters. Remember, he was up there arguing by himself. Rainey should have been your number one ally if you're trying to do something like that or trying to convince her. But he tries to go in there with force, basically thinking, I'm a man, I can do what I want. That was his first mistake. Number two, he underestimated Rainey's. Rainey's kind of showed you that contrast about being smart with your politics and being impulsive, like we saw with Damon. Rainey's initially was going to go in there and advocate for herself. She was tired of all of them. She's tired of the scheming that Rhaenyra and Damon have been doing. She's convinced that they killed her son. She really doesn't want anything to do with him, and she really doesn't want Damon on the throne because she knows how impulsive he is and knows he wouldn't be a good ruler. He's just out for power. So she knows she's the best person for the gig. And at the same time, she felt like she had the opportunity to see Rhaenyra grovel and become powerless. So she basically, to Rhaenyra's face, rejected her offer. Pretty much everybody rejects Rhaenyra's offers. And Rhaenys was ready to go in there and make her claim. But unlike Vaemon, she knows how to read a room and she knows how to call an audible. When she saw Viserys come in there, she realized immediately, okay, the power has shifted. I really don't have enough power in my corner to overrule the king. So if I come out here and advocate for myself and usurp power from a decision that he made in making Lucerys the next in line for the Driftmark throne, I put myself in danger. And she also realized that while Rhaenyra is married to Daemon, she's basically putting her life at risk going against Rhaenyra that openly because she knows how Daemon is. So immediately on the fly, within about 30 seconds, she realized that and made the smart decision as far as taking Rhaenyra up on her offer. That was something Damon wasn't capable of doing because, I mean, not Damon, Damon wasn't capable of doing because he was too emotional and all in his feelings. He gave us a great moment with those lines, but he basically sealed his fate by doing that and got his head chopped off. And there's really nothing that House Velaryon can do, if he has any allies in the background, because he, in front of everybody in that court, essentially committed open treason. So the only thing, and he insulted the queen to be's husband and the queen to be herself. So they had every right to go at him and take his life. So there's really nothing House Velaryon can do. And I feel really bad for them. It's kind of funny. This is the first, black family on the show and all that. I know a lot of people have high hopes for them, but they've been taking losses after losses. As far as they know, Laenor is dead. He got killed by his lover and thrown in the fire. Corlys might die, and then Laenor got beat up at his own wedding, and now Vaemon gets his head chopped off. So I mean, it's like L after L after L, So I don't know if they're going to get a big win before the season is out. I think Rhaenys at this point is really just trying to hold the house together. Now, of course, she kind of sewed up their next line, and we know Baela will eventually be queen based on the decision that she made to take Rhaenyra up on her offer to marry their houses. But the look on Rhaenys' face towards the end, it makes me wonder what is really going through her mind because it felt like there was some regret on her face. I don't think she's in a position now to potentially betray Rhaenyra and Daemon because they're united by marriage now. So I think she's just kind of resigned to the fact that, I'm stuck with these politics from now on. I've kind of hinged my bet to Rhaenyra and Daemon, even though I secretly hate them. But now I got to ride this out to the end. I think that was the look on her face of kind of just being resigned to her fate going forward. So I feel bad for her to a degree, but Rainey did make the right decision in that moment. You can't side with someone emotional like Damon. It's kind of like, what is it? The enemy of my enemy is my friend, so to speak. So that was Rainey's and Damon's storyline. Next up was Viserys. I got to say the actor Paddy, he did a fantastic job with this episode, probably his best acting performance of the series so far, and he's been great throughout the entire series. But he really nailed down the whole idea of, a patriarch in his final days trying to make right with everyone in his family to ensure that his family can function when he's not here. He's literally on death's door. He's decaying in front of our eyes. He doesn't have an eye. Eye fell out of his head. He looks like a walking zombie, literally. And he's going in and out of consciousness. When Rhaenyra made that bedside plea to him, talking about, "I need you, Father. I need you to support me." We're assuming he's in delirium from the milk of the poppy and is not able to understand anything that she's saying. But anybody that's been around a family member that's dying or has Alzheimer's, we know in some of those moments they can become completely lucid and they can be the person that we remembered 15, 20 years ago. And that's exactly what happened with him. Even though the body was still broken down, the mind was sharp enough to do what he needed to do to make sure that his daughter survived the danger that was in front of her. He literally, with his remaining strength, crawls through the throne room. Well, not crawls, but ambles through and shambles through the courtroom uh, with the cane. He has the gold mask on. He's looking like a ghost, Phantom of the Opera, and finally makes it to the throne to pass judgment and to verify Rhaenyra's claim. And there was a very touching moment with all the drama that's happened between Daemon and Viserys. That's still his family. And Daemon realized, and he said in the first episode, I believe, he told Viserys that, you've been weak, and I'm the only one here that can protect you. And that came full circle because when he got to the throne and couldn't keep the crown on his head, it was Daemon who picked it up and put it on his head and also killed Daemon to reinforce Viserys' power. Because the only reason Daemon went off like that is because he felt the king was weak. He felt the king was worthless. You saw the look on his face when Viserys tried to get up with the dagger. Daemon was looking like, "You're not going to do anything." But there was Damon right behind him to support his brother. So that was a very touching moment to finally see the brothers reconcile. And it kind of shows you the importance of Damon, and the contrast. Let me say another contrast with the brothers. I said in my last recap that Viserys is a good man, but being a good man made him a weak king. But on the other hand, we see with Damon, we see the contrast. Damon is a horrible person. Let's not forget what he did to his first wife and that he basically groomed his his niece as a child. So that doesn't escape me. He's not a good person. But the fact that he's not a good person, it's going to make him or would make him a fantastic king if he would have got on the throne because he knows how to be the bad guy. Viserys kind of wanted to be everybody's friend. He kind of always sidestep any type of aggression. He really wanted to get everybody together and on the same page. Damon's not worried about doing that. He has no problems making an enemy. And honestly, for those of you who are in corporate America like myself, you kind of know that's the way you have to be in order to move up. You cannot be afraid to make enemies, and you have to make people fear you to stay in line as a ruler, and Damon has no problems doing that. So he's going to be the perfect match, I feel, for Rhaenyra to back up her queendom, because we know as many people that might have an issue with her being the first queen, they're going to fear Damon enough to possibly not be an open rebellion against her. At least those are at least the people at King's Landing. So great job with Damon and what he did to protect his wife's legacy and get rid of Damon and support Viserys. Now, after that, we had another great scene. My second favorite scene was when we had the big feast. The big feast when trying to get Daemon and Rhaenyra's children together with Alicent's children, trying to get everybody on the same page. Viserys made one last plea to both sides to put aside all the anger and resentment for all the years. He told them that a house divided cannot stand, which is completely true. We all need to be on the same page. And I felt there was a lot of sadness in this scene. And really, the sadness came from the fact that, for a lot of people sitting at that table, it was in one ear and out the other. When you have that many decades of bitterness built up, it's not going to be one speech that's going to resolve everything, even if it's coming from someone with their dying words. It's just too much resentment that was built up, and particularly with the children. I want to focus on them for a second. The biggest failure of Rhaenyra and Alicent is really what they've done with their children, because the house is going to be divided because you never instilled in those children the fact that we are a united family, or we should be a united family. It was never that. You basically always made it as us against them. So they've internalized that over the years. So now, as young men and young women, they don't look at themselves as family. Bela doesn't look at herself as a Valerian. She basically sent that message to Daemon that exposed Daemon's plan. So she doesn't consider herself a Velaryon or an extended family. In her mind, she's a Targaryen and nothing else. And we know with the Targaryen side, with Alicent's kids, they don't consider Rhaenyra's kids kin or extended family. How some people, even if it's an outside birth and all that, it's like we're still family as long as we're under the same name. They don't look at it like that. They look at those are strong kids. Those are bastards. Those are not my family. I don't want anything to do with them besides, provoking them, which is what Aegon and Aemon were doing the entire dinner for the most part. Now, I also cannot excuse Lucerys and Jace because what was it? I think it was Luke who was sitting there and he was snickering at Aemon when they brought in the pig and was thinking about, how they used to taunt him about not having his own dragon and taunting him about his eye. So he was kind of asking for it too. So I can't really even be that mad at Aemon exploding and then mocking both of them. So that kind of shows you how all those issues from the parents, from Rhaenyra, Alicent, Otto, all that is went down into the children, and that is why no matter how hard Alicent and Rhaenyra tried to reconcile, it's not going to work because they didn't do the work that they needed to with their children to make sure they didn't pass all that bitterness and resentment down the family line. I will say I did enjoy Rhaenyra and Alicent trying to make amends. I thought they were really trying to make an effort, and we all remember, how close they were when they were younger. I think we all remember those moments. So it was good to see them try and get on the same page, but it's too little, too late. If it were just about them, just two women out in the world with regular jobs, it could have worked. They could have reconciled and put all the past behind them. But everything is so much above them now. The crown, the pursuit of power, that's so much above just them as individuals. There's no way they're going to be back on the same page. They're being pulled into too many different directions by too many different forces. So, and that's one thing I will say, it's not a criticism because I do like the faster pacing with House of the Dragon. I feel like if this were the original Game of Thrones, everything that we've seen played out over the last 8 episodes would have taken maybe 3 or 4 seasons. So I like seeing everything play out quicker. But the fact that it is playing out at a faster pace, it does take away from some of the emotional impact of scenes like that. You know, that whole thing with Alicent and Rhaenyra, it was endearing, but the fact that everything flipped in like 10 minutes kind of took away from the impact of that. You know, if we would at least gotten maybe a couple episodes of them trying to work together, it would have made it a bigger emotional impact when it fell apart again. But in this case, it fell apart like at the end of the dinner. And I'm going to say this, as far as the warfare to come, I think Luke and Jace are kind of the most in danger because they don't know how to fight. Remember when they came to King's Landing at first, you know, they took a look at Aemon in the courtyard and they were like shocked at how much of a competent swordsman he was and even being able to get the best of Kriston Cole. But the thing that stood out to me the most is that even with one eye, Aemon tracked them as soon as they came in. He knew that they were in the crowd before, you know, they were even aware that that was Aemon in there fighting. So that makes me believe that when the warfare does come, they're going to be the first ones that are going to be targeted. So they need to be very, very careful. And they don't know how to fight because you saw when I think it was Luke that punched Aemon dead in the face. He shrugged it off and just mushed him and dropped him. So they get in combat, and it's funny because you would think that, you know, with their stepdad being Damon, who's a fierce warrior in his own right, he would have taught them how to fight at some point over the last what 6, 7 years, but apparently not. So they are the first ones that I would be concerned about when this open warfare starts. Um, Next thing I wanted to cover would be Alicent's hypocrisy. You know, I will say that Alicent is a character I enjoy. I really wanted the best for her. I kind of feel like she's, you know, as bad as she is, and everybody's kind of bad on the show. I kind of feel the worst for her because she was pushed into something that she didn't want. At least with Rhaenyra, she always wanted this. You know, as much as she had that moment with Viserys where she was doubting whether she's capable of handling this, but this is something she wanted as the beginning to be the heir. Allison never wanted this. She never wanted to go in there and have to seduce Viserys to be his husband, to be in this position, to now have to fight to make sure that her kids aren't killed because of what Otto was told her will happen when Rhaenyra takes the throne. Allison hasn't wanted any of this, but she's trying her best to manage it. But she can't really change who she is. So this whole religious conversion thing, it really stood out to me because a lot of times we associate religion with a good transformation, right? You know, if you're a Christian, you know the whole story of Paul, you know, when he had the transformation when he saw Jesus was in Damascus, where he had the conversion from being an oppressor to being the biggest advocate for Jesus. We know Malcolm X, the transformation he had when he became a Muslim. So we associate religion with kind of pulling you up from the worst of yourself. But there's another flip side of that. The flip side will be, you know, religion won't change who you are. It'll amplify what you've already been. And if you've already been a terrible person, you're just going to use that religion and that system to justify who you already are, no matter how bad you are. And I feel like we're in that situation now with Allison and her worship of the seven. You know, it was supposed to make her a better person. It's supposed to make her less judgmental, but I don't think it has at all. I just think she's using it to justify everything that she's going to keep doing, which is essentially usurping the crown for her son Aegon. And the biggest example of that would be at the end of the episode when Viserys is in this delirium talking about Aegon is the one and everything. She shouldn't be paying attention to that. She's been giving him milk of the poppy enough to know that he's delirious and he's going to be saying anything. He's in a fever dream. But because she already has her mind set on Aegon needs to be king, she's going to use that just as justification in her mind to do what she's already planned on doing. So now she has something in her back pocket if she's ever confronted about, well, why are you doing this? Why are you taking the throne away from Rhaenyra? She can always just say, well, on his deathbed, Viserys told me that he wanted it to be Aegon, even though he was completely out of his mind, and she knows that deep down. So Allison is really just using this religion as kind of a front and a cover Because if it wasn't, another example would be with her son Aegon. He raped a woman and caused her to be pregnant. If there was any type of justice with this religion, he would have been she would have did something to expose or dishonor him, maybe even take away his claim and say, from now on, I'm going to be advocating for Aemon at least and not you. But something. But all she did was basically give that girl hush money and a plan and the plan BT is what I call it to keep her mouth shut. So there's really no justice, even though now she's claiming to be such a upstanding religious person. So Allison is going to do what she's going to do. Now we have to look at who she has on her side now, because now her big plan of uniting with House Velaryon is up in smoke now. So now she doesn't have Rhaenys on her side, which means she doesn't have the Navy. You also have to remember that Cyrax, the dragon, had 3 eggs, so that's potential 3 more dragons for Rhaenyra's side. And then you have Daemon, and Daemon is no nonsense. He showed that in the throne room that anybody that disrespects Rhaenyra is going to have to answer to him. So, House Targaryen, and by extension Rhaenyra, is looking very good right now, looking very formidable. For a second, it looked like she was in trouble when Rhaenys turned down her offer, but you see how quickly fortunes can change. So Rhaenyra is in a really good spot now. I think the only mistake that she made was leaving King's Landing. Knowing that your father is in that type of state, I know they had the big blow up with the kids. She should have had someone else send those kids home and not leave King's Landing, because in order to make sure that I guess she felt comfortable now that her and Allison are on the same page, but you can't trust that. We already know, or you should know, when family members die, especially matriarchs or patriarchs, all the ill feelings come out, and the siblings and everyone, they start acting like they're entitled to certain things. So if I was Rhaenyra, I wouldn't have went anywhere. I know my father is on his last legs. I'm going to be there to make sure that there's a smooth transition and there's no funny business when it's my turn to wear the crown, especially as the first queen. The fact that she's leaving King's Landing in the preview makes me believe that is going to allow Allison and company to kind of steal the throne from her, basically. And then at that point, it's going to be her trying to travel back, I'm assuming with an army to try and take back what is hers. But that was a big mistake I felt that Rhaenyra made by leaving. But her side is very well equipped, talking about Rhaenyra. Now, Allison, her biggest warrior, I feel, or two biggest warriors are going to be Kriston and going to be, of course, Aemon. Aemon seems to be a fantastic fighter, so he's going to be in a good position as far as whoever he's going to face off with. I'm assuming it's going to be Daemon and Aemon who are going to have the big confrontation, because they had the confrontation in the at the feast, and they're basically kind of mirror images of each other. I mentioned this in the last video. The only thing that's really different is I feel like Damon is more composed, and that comes from his experience being an older man. I feel like Aemon's a little bit more impulsive, and he can get triggered a little more with his emotions, like what happened with Lucerys just for laughing at him. So I feel like if there's going to be an edge, it'll be for Damon in that regard, being just a little bit more composed and less emotional. So overall, excellent episode. Like I mentioned, one of my favorite of the series. I love Damon's little outburst, even though it cost him his head. If you get a chance to watch the review after the episode with HBO, they had the actor talking about it, and he was even still talking trash from the grave about how Damon had to do it from behind and everything. So I thought that was a really cool moment. That's called making the best of your character even in a limited role. This is basically the most that he said the entire series, but it made for a memorable moment. Like we're not going to forget him in that little speech. And also he put it out there finally. When you're talking about rumors and everything, he said it plainly that Rhaenyra's kids are bastards. So we do have to keep in mind how is that going to travel throughout the realm, especially when the warfare starts. Now, a few more points to keep an eye on before I close up. The first thing will be Baela. Bela is obviously now a double agent. So even though she's in the Velaryon house and the Driftwood house, everything that she does, everything that's done, she's gonna report back to Daemon and Rhaenyra. So we have to keep in mind how that's going to affect things, or how that could affect things, depending on how Rhaenys decides to lead. The next thing would be Daemon. and the common people. I want you guys to keep an eye on that simply because remember before Damon left, he was loved by, well, I won't say he was loved by the common folk, but he had the gold cloaks that were under him. So you're basically the police force that he already had in place. So if there's any funny business, which you know there will be when Viserys dies, um, as far as Otto and Alicent keeping the throne from Rhaenyra, I'm assuming Daemon can rise up the Gold Cloaks to be on his side because they're loyal to him, and they're all throughout the castle. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's able to get like a jump assassination on one of the key Hightower people. If it's not Otto, maybe it might be Aegon because in the preview for the next episode, episode 9, it looked like Aegon was running from somebody. So that could be the Gold Cloaks that are after him. So that's something to keep in mind with Daemon disrupting King's Landing before Rhaenyra and him get back there. Next thing to keep an eye on, House Velaryon. I mentioned Bela being a double agent. House Velaryon, we need to keep an eye on if there's going to be anybody or any further division there because Damon was basically cut down. I don't know if he has any children, so I don't know if there's going to be anybody after him that's going to be upset that he was killed in that type of way with no retaliation. So keep in mind we have to see maybe there's going to be some new House Valerian figures that might come out. Of course, the next person we need to keep an eye on will be Larys. We didn't see him this episode, but we know once the king is dead, as we know he'll be dead for episode 9, what is Lars going to do? He's basically there to do Alicent's bidding. So I want to see what he does to shore up her power for the war to come. And that to me means he'll probably kill somebody important. Who that is, I don't know. So let's keep an eye on what Lars has next up. I think that covers everything. We didn't get any new prophecies from Helena. I remember I mentioned last video to keep an eye on her because she mentioned, about the prophecies and the dragon's thread. Nothing from her today outside of commenting how terrible a husband, Aegon is. So she's kind of, been kept in the background, but I'm hoping we get to see more of her. I think she's a dragon rider. I can't remember. She doesn't seem like a warfare person, but it's going to be all hands on deck when the open warfare breaks out. So that is episode 8, Lord of the Tides. Let me know what you guys think. I appreciate you guys checking with me. I want to give a shout out to everyone that commented, not on my episode 7 recap, but episode 6, where I talked about uh, Rhaenyra's stupidity versus Alicent's hypocrisy. And a lot of you commented on the fact that Alicent needed to be careful with, her claims of treason because that can come back to bite her. So it didn't bite her, but you guys were right. It definitely came back to bite Daemon as far as openly talking about the children being bastards. So you guys were right on about that. Now we're going to see where it leads to now in episode 9. So if you like the content, please subscribe and like. We'll be dropping these recaps every Monday afternoon. I think we got 2 more episodes, which is amazing. Things have been flying by. Let me know your predictions, just so you guys know I have not read Fire and Blood. I'm going to wait until the end of this season to do so, and then I'll be kind of caught up on where things might be going because, I can't help but spoil myself. I did the same thing with the original Game of Thrones. After season 1, I ended up reading all the books. So I'll probably do the same thing again once the season is over with, but let me know what you guys think, predictions, favorite characters. I still feel like we don't really have any redeeming characters that are of age. So, I really don't have a side between Alicent and Rhaenyra. I feel like they're both going to destroy each other. I'd be shocked if they both survive by the end of the series. But all right, I'll see you guys next Monday. Take care and have a good week.